Hello fellow human, welcome to my channel. If you don't know me, this channel is all about mental health, psychology, self-understanding, expanding consciousness about yourself and improving your inner experience so you can have a better life. This episode is going to be about anxiety, specifically about 4 types of anxiety. What seems to happen is that people talk about anxiety in very generic terms, and yes, there are a lot of commonalities when it comes to our inner experience, but there are a lot of differences as well. Being very specific about what type of anxiety you might have will give you the answers as to what to do. Because what seems to happen is that people don't match their solutions for the anxiety to the type of anxiety they have. And there are 4 specific types which I'm going to go through. They're fight, flight, freeze and fawn. So if you don't know what type of anxiety you have, but you need to do something about your anxiety, listen up, because most likely I'm going to bring you some in-depth understanding of your nervous system that you didn't have before, which will give you clarity, will ease some stress and stops the overwhelm, because that's usually how anxiety manifests. Anxiety is very confusing, overwhelming, debilitating and paralyzing when you don't know what you're dealing with. And part of my mission is to dissolve the myths around anxiety. So first of all, anxiety is not a negative thing. We see it as a disease or diagnosis. So a lot of people have been diagnosed with it, but actually it's a way in which your nervous system speaks to you, communicates with you. Your nervous system doesn't have words. Your body doesn't have words. Your body has symptoms. The problem is we're not only not listening, but we also, the way we interpret it with our minds, socialized minds, is wrong. So the first takeaway from this is for you to understand that you need your anxiety because it's your navigation system. When your nervous system doesn't know what to do, it sends you a message in the form of a symptom. And that symptom is a full-on bodily experience, which is anxiety. So before we go ahead with the nitty-gritty of what I'm going to talk about, you need to understand that anxiety is not a trait, it's a state. It's a state of your nervous system. Right? I know you may feel it and sort of analyze it on a mind level, and you're trying to understand it and analyze it, but it's a state of your nervous system. I want you to open up to the possibility that you're not an anxious person. You've just been ignoring yourself for too long. You've been abandoning yourself for too long. You haven't been paying attention to yourself for too long. And the reasons might be, and they are very different for each case. And also they change for one person. So if I'm anxious today, that could be one reason. And if I'm anxious tomorrow, that could be another reason. So anxiety is a state, not a trait. And it is a positive communication. It's a sign, it's a message from my nervous system that there is some kind of threat, danger, whatever the thing might be. But first of all, we need to stop invalidating our experience, right? So open up to the possibility that if you shift your understanding of your anxiety, it might ease up. Because one of the reasons why our nervous system sends us this message is because we ignore ourselves. We gaslight ourselves. And very often we abuse ourselves. So, in various ways. It's a message, it's a sign, that's the first thing. We all have anxiety, we need it. It's like a resource of your nervous system to send you a message that you need some course correction in your life, in whatever you're doing, or the situation, right? So sometimes it's a lighthouse, right? If you get anxious, if your body gets anxious in a certain situation, maybe that's a sign that you should get out of this situation, right? Sometimes it's from within. So sometimes I might get anxious because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, you know, there are a lot of reasons for anxiety, but it's a language of the nervous system. And it's a state of the nervous system. That's the main takeaway for now. So let's go into the types of anxiety. You've got 4 different types of anxiety. So your nervous system goes into the state of anxiety. So physiologically speaking, there's lots of energy in your system to get you out of the situation you are in. So body mobilizes energy, so it sort of gears up because it has detected some danger. It does it through neuroception, so perception of the nervous system. So your body is like a sponge, and it has this thing called neuroception. So imagine having eyes all over your body because it looks out for danger. So your body knows quicker than you actually do that something is going on. Animals don't have a problem like that, but we ignore it. We are completely disconnected from this ability. So again, maybe you want to get curious as to how to connect with this ability, because as I said, very often it's because we ignore ourselves and we don't pay attention to what we're doing and where we are. So again, anxiety is very often a very useful sign that we need some course correction when it comes to our behaviors. So the first thing I'm going to write down is that it's a state, not trait. So be careful, because we have a tendency to over-identify with the label. So when you say, I'm anxious, I am anxious, I'm an anxious person, I have anxiety. You are affirming the anxious state, and your body is listening all the time, right? So loosen up around the over-identification with it. We're going to go into that later on, but it's a state, not trait. That's very important. So you are anxious, right? Knowing your type of anxiety will give you a baseline as to what to do about it, because it's very different in 4 categories. So there are 4 main categories of anxieties. You've got the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So internally, you are very anxious. People are anxious, right? What that means is there is adrenaline in the system, cortisol in the system, what we call a stress response. There's mobilization of energy for action or inaction, for getting you out of the situation, for course correction, mainly for action. But the type of action people take is very, very, very different. And everyone has a predominant state. So people are very consistent as to how they act out their anxious state. So people in fight mode, they take action by engaging with reality, very generally speaking, right? So there's this kind of intensity, and I'm talking about the body mainly now. We're going to go into behaviors in a minute, but I'm talking about the body. So people in fight mode, they literally fight with reality to various degrees. So there's intensity, there is thrill, they feed off adrenaline. And that could have very ugly, let's say, consequences, because there is a literal fight. But also there are people who have more sophisticated ways of expressing that. And that could be people who overcommit. They're sort of moving all the time. They're on the go. They overcommit. They're everywhere. They get involved with every project at work. They have a lot of friends. They're constantly busy. They're constantly on the go. And that is the beauty of those people. So that's a very good thing to have in today's world, but that leads to burnout. These people cannot rest. They only collapse, right? And these are the people who, some people love them and some people hate them. These are the people who would be called too much. They're the rebels. I call them the wrestlers. So this is a very distinctive type of pattern of your nervous system that you sort of learn over time. So those patterns, they are being developed over time, over a very long time, right? So they take action, they take a very specific action, because they take action by engaging with everything and everyone. Okay. Next one, flight. These people, on the other hand, they take action, again, that's action, but by disengaging. So the energy in your system, the excess energy for getting out of danger, the anxiety is being acted out in very different ways. So the flight people, they flee the scene, they avoid intensity, they avoid confrontation, conflict, intensity in general, right? They choose what and who they engage with. You could also say these are the extroverted people, so you can literally see them everywhere. They're the introverted, the flight people are introverted people. They flee the scene, they keep themselves to themselves. This is not to say they're not anxious, right? And we have a very shallow understanding as a society when it comes to these things, because a lot of people assume that someone who behaves in a calm and peaceful way, they're not anxious. But you can't see someone's internal state, right? Or we assume that people in fight mode who are constantly engaging with reality, that they're not anxious, they're choosing it, right? And that's their style, that's their personality. That is a very shallow assumption. That's an assumption, and it's a shallow one. So, because we don't show how we are. We show a version of ourselves that we've developed over the years in order to deal with our environment. So again, think about that. Freeze people. They take action, but they stop and start and never finish anything. They engage and disengage and freeze. Engage and disengage and freeze, right? So these are the people who self-sabotage, who make goals for themselves or make to-do lists, but they never go through them, and they keep overwhelming themselves with stuff. And they get overwhelmed and they stop. They start everything from scratch, or they start something new, and their thinking and their approach to reality is very scattered and fragmented. In here you've got like consistent behavior. People are really consistent when it comes to acting out their anxiety. So when people in fight, I call them hustlers and wrestlers. They're very consistent. They're the same all the time. Flight people, also very consistent. Yes, it's very difficult to find someone who avoids intensity and then suddenly on one day engaging with everyone and everything and enjoying an argument or something. That doesn't happen. But in here what happens, you've got a combination, right? So you engage and disengage, engage and disengage. Don't quote me on that, but I think this is where ADHD resides. This is ADHD people, scattered thinking, fragmented thinking, no integrity when it comes to behaviors. And I do think that ADHD is a type of anxiety. And then we have Fawn people, right? So these are Again, these people take action, but again, it's a very specific type of action. So they engage with whatever is happening around them in a very specific way. They meet the expectations of others, and they sort of in someone else's head all the time, and they think, I'm going to do it so they're going to like me. I'm going to say this so they're going to like me. I'm not going to say this because they're going to dislike me. This is a very anxious state internally as well. People pleasers are the most anxious people that you can come across. They'll never admit it because they don't want to burden you. But I have heard enough stories in my therapy room to tell you that, again, people are very consistent here. And people pleasers is a persona. So what I'm talking about here is that your nervous system has chosen a very distinctive style. It's adapted a persona for you to be dealing with the internal state of anxiety. And that persona is very different for those types, right? People are very consistent. Usually you have a predominant state. So if not 100%, is majority of the time you behave in a particular way. They're very rarely mixed. So you're not going to have someone who is the fight mode and fawn, because they're two opposite places in your mind, let's call it, right? So you've got people pleasers here, right? So what do you think about that? I hope this brings some clarity. By determining what type you are, you know what to do, because each type is going to have a different problem. So fight people are prone for burnout. They don't know how to rest. They don't stop unless they collapse, right? They literally burn themselves out daily and they cannot rest. They find stillness annoying because it's a very speedy way of being, right? It's like very intense. So they do everything in a hurry. They hurry themselves up all the time. So that's a very difficult way of being, and people are very bad at moderation. We don't know how to do, we don't know where we have enough. So if you have found this way of dealing with reality and with your anxiety to be the case, you're going to burn out, you're going to feel exhausted, because all of those four, it's about having too much energy in your nervous system, and your nervous system is going to constantly try and bring it down, okay? Because it's uncomfortable. It's like shaking. That's why where you have anxiety attack or panic attack, these people are shaking. Their breathing is shallow, their heart is racing, they're sweating, etc. So that energy in the body is being acted out. So all of these are very exhausting places to be in. So yeah, energy. They express energy in a different way. However, all of these, it's a survival state of the nervous system. It's a survival state. Survival state of the nervous system, right? So internally, you're surviving, you're not thriving. What that means is there's no space in your nervous system for thinking clearly, for creating, for being at peace. You're not at peace internally. That's very exhausting in itself. We don't even know what that is anymore in a society. So I'm asking you to analyze it for yourself. Because as I said, this is a survival state. And you want to do something about your anxiety, because your anxiety wants you to do something about it. You want to start validating your experience for yourself. So learning to actually acknowledge it for yourself. Validate, stop denying it, right? My body is anxious. When you sort of isolate it from yourself and from who you are, and you don't treat it as part of your identity, it sort of loosens up. because a lot of it has a very loopy nature. So you affirm with your words, I'm anxious, I'm an anxious person, I have mental health issues, etc., etc. So you affirm a certain state, right? Your words are very powerful, so you need to be careful about that. So it's a survival state. It's very exhausting. It affects how you think, not only how you behave, but how you think. What I mean by this, your internal state affects how you think, affects your brain, especially your prefrontal cortex. So your thinking is automated, and these are the four styles of thinking, but your thinking is scattered. There's no planning. That's the biggest thing. People who are anxious, they can't think about what's going to happen, right? There's no planning, there's no problem solving, they're only surviving, and it's an automated survival state. The thing I'm talking about is the prefrontal cortex, right? That forehead bit. I don't want to go into details about that, but when it comes to getting out of those states, it's all about teaching your body safety. And the way for each of those subtypes will be very different. Because what you need to think about is reparative experience. Reparative experience. And remember, the inner state of anxiety is because your body doesn't feel safe, right? So, again, depending on where you are, in here, you would ideally start slowing down. Slowing down, being very mindful about how you go about things. Don't feed yourself this crap about multitasking, or if you do more, you do it better. No, actually, there are a lot of details that you're missing. There are a lot of things that you're overlooking, because at the speed you are functioning and you're burning yourself out, really, you're just making yourself more anxious and your nervous system more anxious. So in here, you're thinking about slowing down. Okay? And grounding. If you on the go a lot, you think about grounding. How do you ground yourself? Sometimes it's a matter of 5 minutes of sitting in the chair and controlling your breathing. If you combine certain techniques, it's actually better. But think about the main thing you need to be doing for your anxiety. And think about your body. If my body is anxious and it resolves it this way, what is the reparative experience I can give it to make it feel safe? So in here is by slowing down and making choices, because if you hear, you're most likely overcommit to absolutely everything. You're everywhere with everyone. You reply to everything. And that's burning you out. Your employer probably loves you, right? Because you're doing everything, but it's to your detriment. Flight people, it's taking action by leaving the room, disengaging, and reading everything as danger, right? So they avoid intensity. They're very introverted. So again, making choices which are opposite to what you're currently doing. So choose one person you're not going to avoid. Stop assuming that whatever you are avoiding is going to be bad. So you interpret everything as a threat and everyone as a threat, and you avoid that. Try and engage with one person, and you're going to see more often than not, anxiety is lying to you. So more often than not, people are not dangerous, unless you know, you live in a very difficult environment, but I'm going to assume you are a free person and you can make choices for yourself. So in here, again, making reparative experience, trying to show yourself and trying to show your nervous system that people are not dangerous, and a bit of a challenge is not dangerous. This is how you sort of meet your anxiety halfway. You're going to learn and teach your body to be safe with others, to be safe with a bit of intensity or a challenge. And you remember, you can always rent yourself out and disengage while being present. This way, you're teaching your body how to stay with it. And just prolonging this moment of, instead of just leaving immediately or avoiding anything, or, you know, when you're trying to avoid some sort of phone call or answer or asking someone out or whatever, try and pick and choose and be gentle with yourself, because the nervous system doesn't like you going for things that are too big and overwhelming, especially when you're anxious. In the freeze mode, I call it the fried mode, right, in here. Break your routine of approaching yourself. So, for the freeze people, freeze/fried, I like a shower, because it's like full-on bodily experience, and basically your nervous system calms down in hot water, right, or a bath. I know you can't have a shower 5 times a day, but think about, before you engage with your normal routine of making a list, stopping and starting, sabotaging and going into your head, and right, break your routine. So something that will bring your body into a state of calmness, and then again, different choices. So instead of getting up, grabbing your phone or whatever, start with a 20-minute walk. The 20-minute walking that you're going to do is going to set your nervous system for calmness. So again, reparative experience, opposite choice, you can say, right? Opposite choice. I'm going to see OC. Opposite choice, making a different choice. Because the only thing that we can actually decide on is what choices we make for ourselves. So thinking about teaching your body safety, teaching your body that it's safe, that there's no danger, you need to be able to use your will in order to make a different choice, because you need to make your body safe. So it's sending you a message, I'm unsafe, I'm I'm anxious. So you need to do something to show your body that everything is okay and you are fine. I remember a time where the only thing that would calm me down would be wrapping myself in a lot of blankets and sitting like that, because the body likes the feedback, right? Likes the touch. So giving yourself some kind of sensory experience which will let your body know, let your nervous system know that you are safe, okay? And in terms of people pleasers and people who want to put the fire out by being in everybody's heads and trying to just nod along, because these are the people who, they're thinking no, but they're saying yes. They do whatever, they nod along and they say sorry a lot. So if this is you, again, first of all, know that this is a state, not a trait. People pleasing is very detrimental to you in the long run, because it requires you abandoning yourself constantly. It requires you to be completely disconnected from your needs. So these are normally the nicest people in the office. These are normally the nicest friends. They have always lovely things to say. So if that's you, or you have friends like this, just so you know, these are very anxious people. And they carry a lot of different emotional things. I'm not going into emotions, because when you're in survival state, you're very disconnected from the emotional self, from your goals, from your desires. So think about the opposite experience, right? When you are feeling obliged, start participating in this dance of you pleasing everyone. Find moments in the conversation on the WhatsApp or in the office where someone is asking you to do something, and try and create a space in which you can make a different choice for yourself. So think about that. So you stop people pleasing, right? And make those choices. I know it's very difficult to come out of those patterns, but make a choice for yourself and choose ahead of time. Because when you're in this situation, it's very difficult to say no. But yeah, this is a survival state. Anxiety is a survival state. And knowing your type is going to bring you a lot of clarity. I hope I know that was helpful. It's not that I hope that was helpful. But your anxiety wants you to understand yourself. Good luck. Never give up on yourself.